Tomo, welcome to Cardiff, head coach of the Cardiff Devils. How does it feel?
Great. I was really excited. It's got the train up early this morning. Todd picked me up in at the central Cardiff station, and I've been given the royal tour. And obviously since the last time I was here, there's a lot of things that have changed, and it's a great setup, and I'm really excited to be here.
Tell me a little bit about how the move came about. It was pretty quick, obviously, after your time in Denmark. How did that process go?
Well, it did happen really quick. I mean, obviously I've known Todd for a lot of years, and we got in contact with each other, and we were kind of in the playoff run at that point. And I wanted to focus on that, obviously, with Odense. But things moved pretty quickly, and I had obviously opportunities to stay in Europe, but I was just really excited by the opportunity to be the Cardiff Devils head coach. It's a club that's, I remember when it was formed. I remember going to Solihull as a kid and watching it in its first year, and has a great history, great fan base, and I know hockey's a pretty small world, and things get about, and the ownership group here, everybody talks about how great they are, and obviously Todd, and it's a winning franchise, and I want to be part of that.
You mentioned kind of that relationship with the Devils. You look back through your career, it's kind of been intertwined, like when you're in Coventry, and obviously the Devils and the Coventry have such a great rivalry, and then you were with Sheffield, you beat the Devils to a few titles, and then they went and broke their curse and stuff. Is that feeling of kind of wanting to see the other side of it a bit of a motivation for you, and being on that kind of the other side of what you've been for the previous time you've been in the Elite League?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the old barn and the atmosphere there, and the big blue tent, and obviously now the nice new arena that you've got here. And every time you come into Cardiff, it's going to be a game. And I was lucky enough to coach Coventry in its heyday and its big times, and I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to coach Sheffield. It's another great big club, and now I'm ecstatic to be here. And it's funny, because I've come from winning franchises and coached against Cardiff, which was always a winning franchise and a winning club, and obviously rivalry gets up there because you do what it takes for your own club. But I'm one of us now. I'm a Devil now, and I'm super excited about the future, and just the support that I've had over the last few days has been immense, and it makes my job a lot easier. And everybody's on the same page here, wants the same thing, and I'm just really excited about getting going.
We'll talk quickly about your time in Odense. You took over when they're in a pretty rough spot. They'd obviously missed the playoffs the year before, and then all the way through now to winning the championship with them. What kind of how proud are you of that achievement, and what kind of time did you have over there?
Really proud. I mean, it's a fabulous club. I mean, my agent, who sadly isn't with us anymore, he passed away a year ago. I remember I'd been let go by Schwinnigan in the DL, and I went over to Italy for 6 months, and he said, go over there. It was not a league I was going to look to stay in, but I loved it there. I had a great time there, and then he gave me a call at the end of kind of that season and said, Odense are looking, and because I'd coached in Aalborg, I kind of followed the league, and then I was, Bjarni, I'm not sure. I think they were the last place team for 3 or 4 years prior to me getting in there. And he said, no, go over there. He says, there's a new GM coming in, and some new background staff and management, and see what you can do there. And if you can turn that club around, you'll turn one of the best cities and the best, hockey clubs around in the country. And it took 4 years of hard work, and it was hard work, but it was very gratifying. There's no doubt about that.
Are you envisaging a similar trajectory for the Devils? Maybe not in terms of they haven't dropped quite as low as maybe where Odense were, but is it rebuild, or is it kind of an evolution of what's happened over the past few years in Cardiff?
I think it's a slightly different job. I mean, I was coming in and taking over an Edinburgh back in the day, if you like, and making it a Cardiff. So I mean, I think if you coach the Cardiff Devils, you're expected to win, and people expect you to win. And I come in here, with no illusions that's the job. So I mean, they got close a couple of times, obviously this past season. And hopefully that, we can come in with our experience, myself and Nicholas, and with the great team that we've already got here, and hopefully, assemble some other good parts and we get back to winning ways. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball. You know, we don't put fairy dust over things. You have to work at it, and hard work is something that I'm used to, and I'm looking forward to the challenge ahead. But obviously, we're in a position where this club's been very, very, very successful, especially, you know, under the Lordo years, and I was going back and forth with Lordo when I was coaching Sheffield. So, and I want to get the team back to that.
You mentioned Nicholas. The club announced that he'd be joining you this morning. Big part of your team.
Yeah, a really big part. You know, a good friend of mine, he was the general manager in Färjestad in the SHL, and my assistant coach for 3 years was a young Latvian guy, and Tom, and he went across to the USHL, and I was looking for an assistant coach, and he recommended Nicholas to me. So I didn't really know a lot about him. So, you know, I interviewed him and I asked him to send me some video of certain scenarios and where I saw him fit in, and he kind of ticked all the boxes with me and the general manager over in Odense, and then, you know, we hit it off straight away. He's a good, calm, smart hockey guy, and like me, he's not a younger guy. He's an older guy, so he's a little more experienced in dealing with certain situations, and but he takes his job very, very seriously. And a big part of me taking this job was being able to bring him with me, because I know what he can do and continue with that continuity of the system that I like to play, that he knows inside out now. So it just makes a little, you know, the days of your assistant coach just pushing pucks around, you know, near the ice while you're blowing the whistle and talking about what you want to do in your drills is over. It needs 2 to 3 of us working daily, and he'll add that to us on a daily basis. With
that in mind, you've established the sort of coaching staff. How's recruitment going? Have you had much of an input with that, and what are you looking at in terms of recruitment?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking for a few weeks now, you know, so I've kind of had an idea of who the club want to retain and maybe where we want to strengthen and stuff like that. So it's a daily process. I mean, we're on the phone 3, 4, 5 hours a day between ourselves, and obviously I've got my contacts, and being in Europe a lot, you know, you get a lot of maybe agents that don't use this country as much. So it's you know, I've been reaching out to them, and Franny has been terrific since. I mean, as is Killer, as is Todd, you know, and Franny knows, you know, his recruitment side of things. So I think between the 3 of us, we're a team on that, and I can add something that maybe, you know, has been a little bit different to what they've had here or in the UK. So we've kind of got a ghost roster on the type of team that we want. And I've watched a lot of video of the team last year and where I think that we want to improve. So without giving anything away right now, it's an ongoing process, but we're right in the middle of it, without a doubt.
What is the style, or maybe the hockey philosophy of the Paul Thompson Cardiff Devils compared to previous years?
Well, I mean, I can't compare myself to previous years or previous coaches, because, you know, I wasn't about it. I see the style of play. But, you know, the game's built on speed today. And, you know, I was coaching against a lot of Finnish and Swedish coaches in Europe that, you know, will trap up in the neutral zone, and you have to find ways to get inside. And you know, my team's based on quick transition and getting to the net and getting inside and playing inside. And, you know, my defensemen, you know, I like them to move pucks early. You know, first touch, get it up, support the rush. So we're looking to build. I mean, as any coach, you have to adapt your system to around what you have, and you don't really know what you have until you're out with them on a day. You can watch all the video in the world, you know, but it'll give you 90% of what you want. But, you know, we want to be a team that if you come in here, in the days I remember coming into Cardiff, regardless of the rink, it was a tough night. And we want that to be the same, but the game has changed, you know, and speed is the big thing in the game now, without any shadow of a doubt. And, you know, obviously, you know, there's a lot of injuries, keeping the guys healthy and fit and ready to go, and we work them extremely hard. And there'll be obviously big differences to what the last regime was, because that's what happens when you bring a new coach in. I'm not criticizing the last regime. I have nothing to do with that, but my players will will know that they've come to work, put it that way.
One guy who we know will be here for sure is Joey Martin. And he was a guy, there aren't many of them left who were here last time you were in the Elite League. As a guy who was such a competitor against you for so many years, are you excited to work with him now?
It's funny, I called him a couple of nights ago. I'm just calling round the players that have re-signed. And I said, "Hi, Joey, it's Paul." And he said, "Hi." And I said, "Thank God now, when your arms go up in the air after you've made a great play or scored a goal, we're going to be on the same side, because I think he's been the best Elite League player there's been over the duration of his career. And even last year, I mean, he's not a younger guy. When I was first coaching against him, he was the best player, all round the best player in the league. And I think last year he showed once again, he's right up there. So to have him on the team is fantastic. With his leadership skills, his quality of play, I've only ever heard great things about the guy as well. So I'm really looking forward to working with him.
How has your coaching approach and your coaching style changed since last time you were here?
Well, I've coached in some pretty good leagues since, coaching in the DEL and, even in Italy, and then in Denmark, which is a very high-paced league, a lot of speed. So I think, I don't know, is this my 34th or 35th year professional coaching? You have to adapt, and you have to adapt around how the game is. And I mean, and we change the game as coaches as well. So we have to be aware of what's working out there. So I just think, I'm like anything. You get older. I'm 57 now. You get a little more mature. You get a little more experience. But that will to win is why I'm still here. Otherwise, I would have packed it up and, I mean, believe me, 12-hour bus rides don't turn me on in any way. But the fact of winning and having your team go out there and be an extension of you, is a big thing for me.
One thing I want to ask you, and I'm going to be very careful with how I phrase this question, is there are Devils fans out there who have been around since you were in charge in Coventry and since you were around in Sheffield, who maybe aren't sure how to feel about now having you on their own bench. What do you say to those guys? Not necessarily to kind of convince them that you're happy to be here, but how would you tell them that, you're one of the good guys now?
I think that's a really good question. And obviously when you've been, if I wasn't a rival, I don't think they would have thought that way. It was because I was winning trophies, Cardiff were winning trophies. And, that rivalry comes between the two teams. And of course, in Sheffield, they always ramp it up a little bit more than everywhere else. So, but all I can say is I'm a Cardiff Devil now, and I am 110% committed every day to do the best I can do to make this organisation the best it can be. And there's a lot of parts to that. And I am generally, I wouldn't have come back to the UK if it wasn't for the Cardiff Devils. And I'm not saying that because I want to win friends. It's not about that. I hope our style of play and hopefully success gets me the respect here. But the Cardiff Devils is a club with a huge tradition, huge history. And I want to work for this ownership group, and I want to work for Todd Kelm, and I want to work with Neil Francis, and I want to work with this bunch of players. So I had a lot of opportunities, and between us, Todd and myself, I felt that this was the right one, and thankfully they did as well.
We always say when coaches come to the UK and they're in their first year in the Elite League, okay, there's maybe less pressure to win immediately because you don't quite understand the difference between that and coaching in Europe or in North America. Whereas obviously you've coached here before. Do you feel a pressure that there has to be maybe an expectation from get-go that you're going to need to get trophies on the board?
I don't feel a pressure. I feel an expectation because, that's why I want to coach the Cardiff Devils. It's as simple as that. And like I said, the rebuild that I did in Odense is a slightly different story, where I'm coming into a club that's expected to win. So I don't feel a pressure. I'm excited about the challenge. And, a lot of people in Europe don't really understand the British League because it is a 54-game playoff, because the league is everything here, where over there it's very much based for the playoffs. And of course, you've got to make the playoffs, and the higher you finish in the league gives you a better option in the quarterfinals and going forward and home ice and everything else. Where here you can't take a night off, and you play back-to-back games. You know, a lot of the teams, I think it's only maybe Finland is the only league, kind of elite league in Europe, where they play back-to-back games. Every other league, you get a day off in between to recover, especially from a travel point of view. And so it is a grind. There's no doubt it's a grind. But I think I've done my work in this league to understand what the grind is and balance it out. So no, I don't feel pressure. I enjoy the fact that I'm in a position coaching a great club that has an opportunity to win.
Simply put, what makes a successful season this year?
Trophies.
And finally, do you have a message to the Red Army ahead of the year?
Yeah, I can't wait to see you all. I'm absolutely stoked. And I'm going to tell you a funny story. So when we're talking about them announcing me, and Franny's like, and Killer's like, I said, Franny, my mum's half Welsh. And he went, really? I said, yeah, my granddad was full Welsh. And my great-granddad never spoke English until he was 17. He was a copper miner up in Anglesey. And Franny says, we'll put it out. It'll smooth it over. And I just burst out laughing at that. But no, I can't wait to step out in the first game in front of all these great fans, passionate fans, and don't have a doubt about my loyalty. My loyalty is only with the Cardiff Devils.
Tomo, thank you very much for your time. Good luck with the season.
Thank you.